The waiter approached our table with deliberate steps, clutching the leather folder that would change everything. 14 family members sat around the extended table at Marcello's, celebrating my sister Emma's promotion to regional manager. Wine glasses clinked, laughter echoed, and garlic bread disappeared faster than our server could refill the baskets. When he placed the bill directly in front of my father, Dad barely glanced at the total before his eyes found mine across the table. "You're covering everyone tonight. You make more money," he announced with the casual authority of someone who'd never questioned his right to spend my earnings. Emma's husband Brad leaned close to her ear but spoke loud enough for me to hear, "Finally useful for something." I pulled out my credit card without hesitation, signed for $1,847, then stood up slowly. "This was lovely. Also, I'm selling the apartment. You'll need to move out soon." Their jaws dropped simultaneously. 4 years earlier, I'd stood in this same Italian restaurant after Mom's funeral, trying to process the lawyer's words about inheritance. The will was straightforward. Emma received Mom's jewelry collection and savings account, totaling $43,000, while I inherited the 3-bedroom apartment on Manhattan's Upper West Side. At 24, inheriting an $850,000 property felt overwhelming rather than fortunate. Emma had burst into tears that day not from grief, but from financial panic. Her marketing job barely covered her studio apartment rent in Queens, and Brad's construction work provided inconsistent income. When they approached me 3 weeks later asking to move into Mom's place temporarily, I couldn't refuse my grieving sister. "Just until we get back on our feet," Emma had promised, clutching tissues in Mom's living room. "Maybe 6 months tops." Brad nodded earnestly beside her. "We'll help with utilities, keep the place maintained. You won't even know we're here." I'd handed over the keys that afternoon, watching them load their belongings into the spacious bedrooms that still smelled like Mom's lavender perfume. The apartment felt too empty anyway, filled with memories I wasn't ready to face alone. The first year passed peacefully. Emma and Brad kept their word about maintenance, and I appreciated having family in Mom's space rather than strangers. They invited me for Sunday dinners, and Emma would cook Mom's recipes using the same cast iron pans. Brad seemed grateful, then always thanking me for my generosity and promising they'd be independent soon. Somewhere during the second year, gratitude morphed into expectation. Emma stopped mentioning temporary arrangements, instead discussing furniture purchases and redecorating plans. Brad began treating the apartment like his property, installing a new sound system and replacing Mom's vintage fixtures without asking permission. When I expressed concern about the changes, Emma accused me of being controlling. "We live here too, Dante," she'd snapped during one particularly tense conversation. "We can't just exist in a museum." The third year brought monthly family dinners that invariably ended with me paying the entire bill. Dad would invite everyone to restaurants I couldn't afford on my software developer salary, then assume I'd cover expenses for aunts, uncles, and cousins I barely spoke to throughout the year. Emma and Brad never offered to contribute, treating these gatherings like free entertainment, funded by my obligation as the successful family member. My promotion to senior developer at the tech company should have been cause for celebration. Instead, it became ammunition for increased financial demands. Dad started calling me his investment banker son, joking about my responsibility to support the family now that I earned a decent living. Brad's attitude shifted from grateful to entitled, making comments about my duty to share wealth with relatives who'd always been there for me. The apartment's value had climbed to $875,000 by the 4th year, but I couldn't access that equity while Emma and Brad occupied the space. My girlfriend Sarah and I had been discussing buying a house together, but my inheritance remained locked away by family members who showed no intention of leaving. Recent months had grown increasingly uncomfortable. Emma treated the apartment like her personal property, hosting parties without informing me and giving spare keys to friends. Brad made snide remarks about my clothing choices, car, and dating life, as if my financial success somehow diminished his masculinity. Dad continued orchestrating expensive family events while expecting me to fund them, never acknowledging the burden this placed on my actual budget. Tonight's dinner was supposed to celebrate Emma's promotion, but it felt more like another opportunity for the family to exploit my perceived wealth. When Brad whispered his cruel comment about my usefulness, something inside me snapped. 4 years of accumulated resentment crystallized into a moment of absolute clarity. I'd been enabling their behavior, allowing family dynamics to dictate my financial decisions and living arrangements. The apartment represented more than property. It was my inheritance from Mom, my future with Sarah, and my chance at independence. Emma and Brad had taken advantage of my grief and generosity, transforming temporary assistance into permanent entitlement. Standing in that restaurant watching their shocked faces process my announcement, I felt lighter than I had in years. The decision was made and there would be no turning back. The phone started ringing at 7:30 the next morning. Dad's voice crackled through the speaker with righteous indignation, demanding an explanation for my selfish outburst at dinner. He'd already spoken with Emma, Uncle Robert, and Aunt Patricia, rallying family support for what he called my money-grabbing scheme. Your mother would be ashamed, he declared, his favorite weapon when logical arguments failed. Emma's family Dante. Family takes care of family. I let him finish his lecture before responding calmly. Family doesn't exploit each other either, Dad. Emma called an hour later, tears flowing through her words as she pleaded for understanding. She spoke about family loyalty, Mom's wishes, and the hardship my decision would create for her marriage. Brad grabbed the phone during her emotional breakdown, his voice sharp with barely controlled anger. You can't just kick us out, he threatened. We have tenant rights. You'll need to go through the courts, and that could take months. His legal knowledge surprised me, suggesting he'd already researched eviction procedures. This wasn't a spontaneous reaction to my announcement, but a calculated response from someone who'd prepared for this possibility. I spent the following Tuesday researching landlord-tenant laws in New York, discovering the complexity of removing long-term occupants even when no formal lease existed. Emma and Brad qualified as month-to-month tenants under state regulations entitled to 30 days' notice and protection from arbitrary eviction. The legal process could stretch for months if they chose to fight. Wednesday afternoon, I decided to visit the apartment and assess its condition for a potential sale. I'd been avoiding the space since Mom's death, visiting only for brief holiday gatherings when Emma insisted on hosting family events. Using my key felt strange after 4 years of treating the place like Emma's territory. The building doorman Thomas greeted me with surprised recognition. Mr. Dante, nice to see you. Visiting your sister. Actually, it's my apartment, Thomas. I inherited it from my mother. His expression shifted uncomfortably. Oh, I didn't realize. Your brother-in-law, he told us you'd signed the place over to them. That statement stopped me cold. Brad had been spreading lies about apartment ownership, positioning himself as the legitimate occupant to building staff. I wondered what other deceptions he'd constructed around my property. Walking through Mom's apartment felt like entering a stranger's home. Emma and Brad had replaced her furniture with modern pieces, painted over her carefully chosen wall colors, and removed family photographs in favor of generic artwork. The space I remembered as warm and lived in now felt sterile and impersonal. In the smaller bedroom, I discovered something that made my blood run cold, a discreet lockbox mounted behind a decorative planter near the window, the type used by short-term rental services for key exchange. Confronting Thomas required delicate questioning. The doorman was a good man who'd worked in the building for 15 years, and I didn't want to create problems for his employment. Over coffee in the lobby cafe, I asked casual questions about apartment visitors and package deliveries. Your brother-in-law runs a busy household, Thomas admitted reluctantly. Lots of guests coming and going. Different people every few days. What kind of guests? Thomas glanced around nervously before leaning closer. Tourists mostly. Folks with suitcases and guidebooks. Mr. Brad said they were family visiting from out of state, but he shrugged apologetically. Seemed like an awful lot of family. How long has this been going on? Maybe 8 months. Mr. Brad gave me $100 last Christmas and asked me to be discreet about the visitors. Said you preferred privacy. My heart pounded as the implications became clear. Brad had been operating an illegal Airbnb from my inherited apartment, using my property to generate income while living rent-free. The lockbox, the tourist visitors, the lies about ownership. Everything pointed to a systematic scheme to profit from my generosity. That evening, I searched vacation rental websites using the apartment's address. Within minutes, I found the listing, Luxury Manhattan Getaway, Upper West Side Charm, with photos of Mom's apartment transformed into a tourist destination. The nightly rate was $200 with overwhelmingly positive reviews, praising the location and amenities. Calculating backwards, through the booking calendar, Brad had earned approximately $4,800 monthly from illegal subletting. Over 8 months, he generated nearly $40,000 in unreported income using my property, all while claiming financial hardship and accepting my free housing. Sarah arrived at my apartment that night to find me surrounded by printed screenshots and rental agreements. Her reaction was immediate fury, followed by practical advice about legal recourse. "This is fraud," she declared, studying the evidence. "He's been running a business from property he doesn't own, lying to building management and hiding income. You need legal representation immediately." We spent the evening researching tenant laws, illegal subletting penalties, and eviction procedures. The situation was more complex than simple family drama. Brad had committed multiple violations of city housing regulations and potentially tax evasion. Thursday morning, I contacted a private investigator recommended by Sarah's lawyer friend. Marcus Rodriguez specialized in financial fraud cases and promised comprehensive documentation within a week. The retainer fee was expensive, but I needed professional evidence before confronting the family again. People like your brother-in-law count on family loyalty to protect them from consequences, Marcus explained during our initial consultation. Once you have solid proof, he'll have nowhere to hide. The investigation would document every aspect of Brad's illegal operation, guest records, financial transactions, communications with renters, and building policy violations. Marcus assured me that 8 months of evidence would provide overwhelming support for eviction and potential criminal charges. As I signed the investigator's contract, I felt a mixture of anger and determination. My family had taken advantage of my grief and generosity, but Brad's criminal behavior crossed every line of acceptable conduct. The temporary housing arrangement had become a systematic fraud scheme, and I was done being the victim. Marcus delivered his report on a Thursday afternoon that forever changed my understanding of Brad's criminal operation. The evidence package contained 43 pages of documented fraud, including photographs of illegal key exchanges financial records, showing unreported income guest reviews spanning 8 months, and a detailed booking calendar revealing Brad's systematic exploitation of my property. The numbers were staggering. Brad had hosted 167 different guests, charging $200 per night plus cleaning fees and service charges. His total earnings exceeded $38,000 during the past year alone, all generated from an apartment he occupied rent-free through my generosity. Attorney Jennifer Walsh reviewed the evidence with professional fascination and personal outrage. A specialist in landlord-tenant law, she'd never encountered such blatant fraud combined with family manipulation. Her legal opinion was unambiguous. Brad had violated multiple housing regulations, tax laws, and building policies while engaging in criminal fraud. This goes beyond simple eviction. Jennifer explained organizing the evidence into neat categories. Your brother-in-law has committed federal tax evasion, violated city housing codes, breached building regulations, and engaged in systematic fraud. We're looking at both civil and criminal liability. Armed with comprehensive documentation and legal support, I prepared for the family confrontation I'd been dreading. Dad called that Friday morning demanding a family meeting to resolve this nonsense before it damaged relationships permanently. His tone carried the expectation that I would apologize and withdraw my eviction threat like a scolded child. The gathering convened Sunday afternoon at Dad's house in New Jersey, the same living room where we'd held Mom's wake 4 years earlier. Emma arrived with red-rimmed eyes and theatrical exhaustion, clearly prepared for an emotional performance. Brad entered with aggressive confidence, treating the meeting like a negotiation he intended to win. Uncle Robert and Aunt Patricia flanked Dad on the sofa, their expressions stern with disapproval for my greedy behavior. Cousin Michael and his wife Janet sat near the windows, whispering among themselves about family obligations and shared responsibilities. The room buzzed with predetermined judgment against my decision to reclaim my inheritance. Emma began with tears describing the stress my eviction threat had created for her marriage and career. She spoke about family loyalty, Mom's wishes for us to support each other, and the devastating impact my selfishness would have on their future stability. "We've been like caretakers for Mom's apartment," she sobbed, clutching tissues dramatically. "Keeping it beautiful, maintaining everything perfectly. Now you want to throw us away like garbage." Dad's anger erupted with volcanic force, his face reddening as he accused me of betraying family values for monetary gain. He called me heartless, greedy, and ungrateful for the support they'd provided throughout my life. According to his version of events, I owed the family compensation for their emotional investment in my success. "Your mother didn't raise you to abandon family when they need help," he thundered, pointing his finger like a courtroom prosecutor. Emma and Brad have been nothing but grateful and respectful. This apartment obsession is pure selfishness. Uncle Robert joined the attack, revealing that family members had discussed my money problems for months. According to their whispered conversations, I'd become arrogant and entitled since my promotion, forgetting my roots and responsibilities to relatives who'd supported me through difficult times. Brad's performance was masterful manipulation, combining wounded innocence with veiled threats about family consequences. He spoke about their contributions to apartment maintenance, their respect for Mom's memory, and their willingness to compensate me for reasonable expenses if money was my primary concern. "We've treated that place like a shrine to your mother," he declared with practiced sincerity. "Every improvement, every repair, every moment of care has been our gift to her memory and your inheritance." The emotional manipulation reached its crescendo when Emma suddenly announced she was pregnant, placing her hand protectively over her stomach, while fresh tears streamed down her cheeks. The room fell silent as she described the devastating impact my eviction would have on her unborn child's safety and security. "You're not just throwing us out," she whispered through sobs. "You're destroying the future of your nephew or niece. Is money really more important than family blood?" Dad's expression transformed from anger to horror as he contemplated his pregnant daughter facing homelessness. Uncle Robert and Aunt Patricia exchanged meaningful glances, clearly viewing Emma's pregnancy as the ultimate trump card against my heartless demands. I waited for the emotional storm to subside before placing Marcus's evidence folder on the coffee table. The room watched with confused curiosity as I began distributing copies of financial records, guest reviews, booking calendars, and photographic documentation of Brad's illegal subletting operation. "Before we discuss family loyalty and Mom's wishes," I said calmly, "everyone should understand exactly how Brad has been maintaining the apartment." The silence was deafening as family members studied evidence of systematic fraud. Dad's face went pale, reading guest reviews, praising the charming vacation rental. Uncle Robert's hands trembled slightly as he examined booking records showing 8 months of commercial operation. Emma's pregnancy announcement suddenly seemed suspicious in its timing. Her emotional breakdown felt calculated rather than genuine, designed to manipulate family sympathy at the precise moment when I threatened their fraudulent income stream. "These are lies!" Brad sputtered, his confident demeanor cracking as evidence mounted against him. "Someone's trying to frame me. Dante probably hired people to fake this evidence." But the documentation was overwhelming and professionally prepared. Guest photographs showed strangers in Mom's living room financial records, tracked deposits to Brad's personal account, and building security footage confirmed the constant stream of tourists Marcus had captured. Emma's reaction to the evidence revealed her complicity in the scheme. Instead of shock at discovering her husband's criminal behavior, she immediately began damage control, minimizing the subletting operation as occasional guests, and claiming ignorance about financial details. The family meeting dissolved into chaos as loyalties shifted and accusations flew. Dad's anger redirected toward Brad as he realized the extent of deception in his daughter's marriage. Uncle Robert demanded explanations for what he termed criminal fraud, while Aunt Patricia wondered aloud about Emma's knowledge of the illegal operation. But Emma's pregnancy claim nagged at my conscience despite everything. As the family argued around us, I remembered a conversation with our family doctor's son, Alex, who worked as a nurse practitioner at a women's health clinic. A discreet phone call that evening revealed troubling information about Emma's recent medical consultations. "I can't discuss specific patients," Alex said carefully, "but I can tell you that your sister called 3 weeks ago asking about home pregnancy test accuracy. She seemed anxious about getting reliable results quickly. 3 weeks ago was exactly when I'd first mentioned potentially selling the apartment during a casual family dinner." Emma's pregnancy announcement felt increasingly like desperate manipulation designed to guilt me into abandoning my eviction plans. The realization that my sister would fake pregnancy to protect her husband's criminal operation shattered my remaining faith in family loyalty. They weren't just taking advantage of my generosity anymore, they were actively participating in fraud while using emotional manipulation to maintain their victim status. Armed with medical information from Alex and growing suspicions about Emma's convenient pregnancy announcement, I arranged a private meeting with my sister at a coffee shop near her office. The neutral location would prevent the emotional theatrics that dominated family gatherings, forcing an honest conversation about her involvement in Brad's criminal operation. Emma arrived 20 minutes late, claiming pregnancy fatigue as her excuse. She ordered decaffeinated coffee and made exaggerated gestures about morning sickness, clearly committed to maintaining her deceptive performance. I waited for her to settle before placing a pregnancy test box on the table between us. "Alex mentioned you called the clinic asking about test accuracy," I said quietly. "He also mentioned the results." Her face went white as the implications registered. The pregnancy story was unraveling, and she knew it. For several moments, she stared at the test box, while her carefully constructed narrative collapsed around her. "It's complicated," she finally whispered, abandoning the emotional manipulation tactics that had worked so effectively during family meetings. "The timing isn't ideal, but we're trying to start a family." "Emma, you're not pregnant. Alex confirmed the negative test results. This whole story is manipulation designed to protect Brad's fraud scheme." Her breakdown was genuine this time, tears flowing from shame rather than calculated performance. She admitted that Brad had pressured her to claim pregnancy when my eviction threat became serious, believing family sympathy would force me to reconsider. The deception had spiraled beyond her comfort level, but she felt trapped by her husband's increasingly desperate measures. "He said you'd never kick out a pregnant sister?" She sobbed, mascara streaking down her cheeks. "I knew it was wrong, but he convinced me you were being unreasonable. He said the rental income was our salvation." "So you knew about the illegal subletting Emma's silence answered my question. She'd been complicit in Brad's scheme, helping prepare the apartment for guests and maintaining the deception with building staff. The Innocent Victim Act was as fraudulent as her pregnancy claim. Our conversation was interrupted by my phone ringing with an unknown number. The caller identified himself as Detective Rodriguez from the Financial Crimes Unit, requesting a meeting about identity theft charges I'd reportedly filed. Confused, I explained that I hadn't contacted police about identity theft. According to our records, someone filed complaints using your name and social security number regarding unauthorized credit applications. We need to verify these claims and gather additional evidence. Emma's face went even paler as I scheduled a meeting with Detective Rodriguez. Something beyond illegal subletting was happening, and her reaction suggested she knew about additional criminal activity. That afternoon's meeting at the police station revealed the devastating scope of Brad's fraud operation. Using my apartment address and personal information he'd gathered over 4 years, Brad had applied for 3 credit cards in my name, accumulating $47,000 in unauthorized debt. Detective Rodriguez spread the evidence across his desk credit applications, with forged signatures, utility bills, redirected to create false residency proof, and financial statements showing systematic identity theft spanning 18 months. Brad had been intercepting my mail at the apartment using stolen personal information to access my credit and financial accounts. Identity theft cases this systematic usually involve long-term planning, the detective explained. Your brother-in-law has been building toward this for years, establishing credibility through his apartment access and gathering personal information through normal family interactions. The revelation was devastating. Every family gathering, every casual conversation about my work and finances, every moment of trust had been opportunities for Brad to gather information for his fraud schemes. He'd been targeting me systematically while accepting my generosity and hospitality. Financial advisor Patricia Chen helped me understand the full damage during an emergency consultation that evening. My credit score had dropped 120 points due to unauthorized accounts, missed payments I'd never received bills for, and maxed out credit cards I didn't know existed. The financial recovery process would take months of dispute filings, fraud alerts, and credit monitoring. This level of identity theft suggests your brother-in-law has done this before, Patricia warned. People don't develop these skills overnight. He's likely targeted other victims in the past. Sarah's research that weekend confirmed Patricia's suspicions. Brad's criminal history included fraud convictions in New Jersey, restraining orders from former girlfriends, and civil judgments for financial crimes. Emma had married a career criminal who'd been using our family relationships to access new victims. The most damaging discovery was Emma's signature on several fraudulent documents as a witness or guarantor. She'd been more than complicit. She'd been an active participant in systematic fraud against her own brother. The innocent victim performance was completely fabricated. Confronting Emma about the evidence required careful planning. She'd already lied about pregnancy and admitted knowledge of illegal subletting, but her involvement in identity theft represented felony criminal activity. Jennifer Walsh advised documenting everything before Emma could destroy evidence or claim coercion. Monday morning's meeting in Jennifer's office lasted 3 hours as we reviewed evidence of fraud, identity theft, illegal subletting, and document forgery. The criminal case was building beyond simple family disputes into federal charges that could result in years of prison time for both Emma and Brad. Your sister faces serious legal consequences, Jennifer explained solemnly. If she cooperates with law enforcement and provides evidence against her husband, prosecutors might offer reduced charges. But her participation in identity theft isn't something we can minimize. The weight of betrayal was crushing. My sister hadn't just enabled her husband's criminal behavior, she'd actively participated in stealing my identity and destroying my financial security. 4 years of family loyalty had been repaid with systematic fraud and deception. But Emma's choices had created this situation, and I couldn't protect her from consequences any longer. Brad's criminal behavior was escalating, and my continued silence would only enable future victims. It was time for the entire truth to emerge regardless of family consequences. The criminal charges against Brad were filed on a Wednesday morning that felt like the culmination of months of investigation and family betrayal. Detective Rodriguez presented the case to prosecutors with overwhelming evidence: identity theft, mail fraud, illegal subletting, and tax evasion charges that carried potential sentences totaling 15 years in federal prison. Emma received a phone call that afternoon informing her that she was also under investigation for her role in the fraud scheme. Her signatures on forged documents and active participation in identity theft made her a co-conspirator rather than an innocent victim. The reality of criminal charges finally shattered her remaining loyalty to Brad. Thursday's eviction proceedings should have been straightforward given the evidence of illegal activity, but Brad's desperation produced one final surprise. His attorney presented the court with a lease agreement bearing my signature claiming Brad had legal tenancy rights as a contracted renter with monthly rent payments. The document was professionally forged, but obviously fake to anyone familiar with my actual signature. Brad had hired a document specialist using stolen credit card money, creating false lease agreements dated 2 years earlier with backdated rent receipts and witness signatures. Judge Martinez ordered an immediate handwriting analysis while granting a temporary restraining order, preventing any changes to the apartment. The legal process was being manipulated by Brad's criminal creativity, delaying justice while he remained in my property. Forgery adds another felony charge, Jennifer explained after the hearing. But it also complicates our eviction timeline. The court has to verify document authenticity before ruling on tenancy rights. The handwriting expert's analysis took 5 business days, during which Brad continued operating his illegal Airbnb while facing multiple criminal charges. His behavior became increasingly erratic as legal pressure mounted, alternating between aggressive defiance and desperate attempts at family reconciliation. Emma made her choice during that painful week, filing for divorce and moving to her friend's apartment in Queens. She provided prosecutors with evidence against Brad in exchange for reduced charges, including recordings of conversations where he'd planned identity theft and discussed targeting other family members for future fraud schemes. He talked about getting access to Uncle Robert's retirement accounts, she revealed during her cooperation interview with Detective Rodriguez. Brad said older relatives were easier targets because they trusted family and didn't monitor their credit closely. Dad's transformation from enabler to advocate happened gradually as the scope of criminal activity became undeniable. He attended every court hearing supporting my legal efforts while mourning the daughter who'd betrayed family trust for money. His enabling behavior had created space for criminal activity to flourish unchecked. Uncle Robert emerged as an unexpected ally, offering financial assistance for legal fees and emotional support during depositions. His business experience provided valuable perspective about fraud recovery and victim advocacy. He'd suspected something wasn't right about Brad for months, but hadn't wanted to interfere in Emma's marriage. Families protect each other from outside threats, he explained during a difficult conversation about collective responsibility. But when the threat comes from inside protection, becomes enabling. We all made mistakes by not questioning Brad's behavior sooner. Building management cooperated fully with law enforcement, providing security footage and witness testimony about Brad's illegal operation. Thomas the doorman admitted accepting bribes to remain silent, expressing genuine remorse for his role in enabling criminal activity. I knew something wasn't right, Thomas told investigators. But Mr. Brad made it seem like you'd approved everything. He said you were just private about business matters. Brad's criminal defense strategy focused on claiming mental health issues and family pressure, portraying himself as a victim of circumstances beyond his control. His attorney argued that identity theft charges were excessive for family financial disputes attempting to minimize felony crimes as civil matters. The prosecution's case was devastating in its thoroughness. Financial records, witness testimony, physical evidence, and victim impact statements created an overwhelming narrative of systematic fraud and family betrayal. Brad's previous criminal history eliminated any possibility of lenient sentencing. Emma's cooperation provided crucial evidence about planning and intent, documenting Brad's premeditation and systematic approach to identity theft. Her recorded conversations revealed discussions about targeting multiple family members and expanding fraud operations to include elderly relatives with retirement assets. The building civil lawsuit added another layer of consequences when Mrs. Patterson, the elderly neighbor whose apartment was damaged, filed suit for water damage and emotional distress. Brad's destructive behavior had affected multiple innocent victims beyond immediate family members. Restraining order proceedings became necessary when Brad's behavior escalated to threats and intimidation. He blamed me for destroying his marriage and future, alternately demanding forgiveness and threatening revenge. His mental state deteriorated as legal consequences mounted and escape options disappeared. Sarah's unwavering support provided emotional stability during the legal chaos. She attended hearings, helped organize evidence, and offered practical advice about financial recovery. Her strength reminded me that healthy relationships were based on mutual respect rather than exploitation and manipulation. The community response was overwhelmingly supportive once neighbors understood the situation. Building residents had noticed the constant stream of tourists but hadn't realized the illegal nature of Brad's operation. Several offered to testify about disruptions and policy violations they'd witnessed. Dad's public apology during a family gathering represented his recognition of enabling behavior and commitment to change dynamics. He acknowledged years of pressuring me to subsidize family expenses while ignoring warning signs about Brad's character and behavior. "I taught you to be generous and responsible," he said with tears in his eyes. "But I never taught you to protect yourself from people who would exploit those qualities. That failure is on me, and I'm sorry." The court hearing for final eviction took place on a Friday morning that would determine the fate of my inheritance and Brad's criminal enterprise. Judge Martinez had reviewed the handwriting analysis confirming document forgery, making Brad's tenancy claims legally worthless. The fake lease agreement added another felony charge to his growing list of criminal violations. Brad's attorney made one final attempt to delay proceedings by claiming his client needed additional time to gather evidence for his defense. The motion was denied based on the overwhelming proof of fraud and illegal activity. Judge Martinez issued an expedited eviction order giving Brad 24 hours to vacate the apartment. The court finds sufficient evidence of criminal activity, fraud, and illegal subletting to warrant immediate removal, Judge Martinez declared. The defendant has no legal right to occupy this property and must vacate within 24 hours or face additional contempt charges. Brad's reaction to the ruling was explosive fury, directed at everyone he blamed for his downfall. He accused me of destroying his family, the court of bias, and his own attorney of incompetence. His behavior in the courtroom required intervention from bailiffs and resulted in additional charges for disorderly conduct. Emma watched her husband's meltdown with horrified recognition of the manipulative behavior she'd enabled for years. Her decision to divorce and cooperate with prosecutors had isolated Brad from his primary source of support and credibility. She was finally seeing him clearly without the filter of manipulation and emotional abuse. The 24-hour notice created a timeline for Brad's final desperate act of retaliation. Unable to accept responsibility for his criminal choices, he decided that if he couldn't profit from the apartment anymore, he would ensure I couldn't either. His plan was simple: destroy the property before being forced to leave. Sunday morning, Brad attempted to sabotage the apartment's plumbing system by damaging pipes behind the bathroom wall. His knowledge of construction work made him confident he could create expensive damage that would delay any sale and cost me thousands in repairs. What he didn't anticipate was the catastrophic water leak that resulted from his amateur demolition efforts. The water damage began around 10 in the morning when Brad's sabotage ruptured a main supply line. Within 30 minutes, water was pouring through the floors into apartments below, creating a cascading disaster that affected 3 floors of the building. Mrs. Patterson's apartment on the floor below sustained the worst damage, with water destroying antique furniture, family photographs, and personal belongings accumulated over 60 years of residence. Building management's emergency response included shutting off water to the entire floor and calling restoration specialists to assess the damage. The scope of destruction was immediately apparent: structural damage to floors and walls, destroyed personal property, and electrical systems compromised by flooding. Brad's presence at the scene during the water emergency made his responsibility obvious. Maintenance staff found him in the bathroom with tools and evidence of deliberate pipe damage. His explanation about trying to fix a leak was contradicted by the systematic nature of destruction and his lack of any plumbing repair experience. Police arrived within an hour, arresting Brad for property destruction, criminal mischief, and violation of his eviction order. The charges were serious felonies given the extent of damage and number of victims affected by a sabotage attempt. His bond was set at $50,000, which he couldn't afford after maxing out stolen credit cards. Mrs. Patterson was rushed to the hospital with stress-related symptoms after discovering the destruction of her life's possessions. The 82-year-old woman had lived in the building for 40 years, and seeing her apartment flooded with sewage water from Brad's sabotage was devastating beyond measure. The building's insurance investigation revealed that Brad's actions voided coverage for the damage, making him personally liable for restoration costs exceeding $180,000. His destructive behavior had created financial consequences far beyond his ability to pay, ensuring years of legal judgments and wage garnishments. Emma's final break with Brad came when she visited him in county jail that evening. His continued blame shifting and refusal to accept responsibility for the catastrophic damage convinced her that divorce wasn't enough. She needed complete separation from his criminal behavior and twisted thinking. He actually asked me to lie to investigators about the plumbing damage, she told me during our conversation the next day. Even facing prison time, he wanted me to help him avoid responsibility for what he'd done to Mrs. Patterson. Moving day assistance came from unexpected sources, as family members sought to demonstrate support and make amends for their previous enabling behavior. Dad arrived with a rental truck. Uncle Robert brought packing supplies, and several cousins volunteered their time to help Emma relocate her belongings. The apartment restoration would take months, but the emotional restoration of family relationships could begin immediately. Emma's cooperation with law enforcement and recognition of her mistakes created possibilities for eventual reconciliation based on honesty rather than manipulation. Building community support emerged as neighbors shared relief about Brad's removal and concern for Mrs. Patterson's recovery. Several residents offered assistance with her temporary housing and emotional support during the restoration process. The criminal behavior had affected everyone, making Brad's removal a community victory. Dad's commitment to therapy and family counseling represented his recognition that enabling behavior had contributed to the crisis. He was finally ready to examine his role in creating family dynamics that prioritized keeping peace over confronting problems. Sarah's presence during the chaos provided stability and perspective about building a future free from toxic family manipulation. Her support never wavered despite the stress and uncertainty created by Brad's criminal behavior. She represented the healthy relationships possible when people respected boundaries and treated each other with genuine care. The building management's offer of apartment management consulting work was unexpected recognition of my handling of the crisis. They were impressed with my documentation legal approach and concern for other residents affected by Brad's behavior. The opportunity could provide income during my financial recovery from identity theft. Mrs. Patterson's gradual recovery was aided by her family's support and the building community's rallying around her needs. She expressed gratitude for my help with insurance claims and legal proceedings, refusing to blame me for Brad's actions, while acknowledging the courage required to stop his criminal behavior. Brad's transfer to county jail pending trial marked the end of his ability to manipulate and harm family members. The weight of multiple felony charges and civil lawsuits ensured he would face serious consequences for years of criminal behavior. 6 months after Brad's arrest and the apartment water damage, the restoration was complete, and the property sale had closed for $875,000. After paying legal fees, restoration costs, and settling with Mrs. Patterson for her damages, I netted enough to purchase the house Sarah and I had dreamed about in Westchester County. Our new home sat on half an acre with mature oak trees and a garden space where we could build something beautiful together. The mortgage was manageable with my promotion to senior developer, and for the first time in years, I felt financially secure and emotionally at peace. My credit score had been fully restored through the fraud victim programs Detective Rodriguez helped me navigate. The 3 unauthorized credit cards were closed, the forged charges removed, and credit monitoring services provided ongoing protection against future identity theft attempts. Financial advisor Patricia Chen praised my systematic approach to recovery and fraud prevention. Brad's sentencing hearing took place on a Tuesday morning in federal court. Judge Collins delivered 18 months in federal prison for identity theft, followed by 2 years supervised probation and restitution orders totaling $230,000. The sentence reflected the systematic nature of his crimes and the multiple victims affected by his behavior. Emma's cooperation with prosecutors resulted in reduced charges, 6 months house arrest, with electronic monitoring, 3 years probation, and community service requirements. She was required to pay restitution for her role in the identity theft scheme and attend counseling for victims of domestic manipulation and abuse. Her actual pregnancy, confirmed 2 months after Brad's arrest, represented new hope for rebuilding her life on honest foundations. The divorce was finalized quickly, given Brad's criminal conviction, and Emma was establishing independent financial stability through her marketing career and state assistance programs for single mothers. Family relationships slowly healed through honest communication and recognition of past mistakes. Dad continued therapy focused on his enabling behavior and began treating family gatherings as opportunities for connection rather than financial exploitation. He insisted on paying his own restaurant bills and encouraged other relatives to take responsibility for their expenses. Uncle Robert became an unexpected mentor for real estate investment opportunities, helping me understand property management and wealth-building strategies. His business experience and genuine remorse for enabling Brad's behavior motivated his desire to support my financial education and success. Sunday dinners resumed at Dad's house with new ground rules. Everyone contributed to meal costs. Conversations focused on positive topics rather than financial complaints. And family support meant emotional encouragement rather than monetary expectations. The change dynamics felt awkward initially, but created healthier relationships over time. Mrs. Patterson recovered fully from her stress-related health issues and became like a surrogate grandmother to Sarah and me. We visited her weekly, helped with grocery shopping and medical appointments, and included her in holiday celebrations. Her friendship enriched our lives in ways we never anticipated. Building management offered me a consulting position, helping other property owners address illegal subletting and tenant fraud issues. My experience with Brad's case and systematic documentation approach proved valuable for landlords facing similar criminal behavior from occupants. Brad's case inspired a class action lawsuit when 3 of his previous victims came forward with evidence of similar fraud schemes. His pattern of targeting family members and romantic partners for identity theft and financial fraud stretched back 8 years, affecting multiple people who'd trusted him with personal information. The legal victory created opportunities for victim advocacy work with the district attorney's office, helping other families understand financial fraud, warning signs, and recovery resources. My experience with identity theft and family manipulation provided credibility when counseling other victims of similar crimes. Emma's personal transformation was gradual but genuine, as she recognized the manipulation and abuse she'd endured during her marriage. Therapy helped her understand how Brad had isolated her from family support and pressured her into criminal activity through emotional manipulation and control tactics. Her commitment to making amends included regular payments toward her restitution obligations and volunteer work with domestic violence organizations. She was building a new identity as someone who'd made serious mistakes, but was working to repair the damage and help other women avoid similar manipulation. Sarah and I announced our engagement during a family dinner at Dad's house, surrounded by relatives who'd learned to celebrate achievements without expecting financial rewards. The ring was modest but meaningful, purchased with money I'd earned through honest work rather than inherited wealth or family obligations. Wedding planning proceeded with new family dynamics that emphasized contribution rather than exploitation. Relatives offered skills and labor rather than expecting me to fund their participation. Dad insisted on paying for the rehearsal dinner, viewing it as his genuine contribution rather than an expectation for me to subsidize. Our first Thanksgiving in the new house included Mrs. Patterson, Emma, with her growing pregnancy dad, and his girlfriend Janet, Uncle Robert, and Aunt Patricia, and several neighbors who'd become close friends. The celebration felt authentic in ways our old family gatherings never had. The guest room we'd prepared for visitors had strict boundaries about length of stay and financial expectations. Sarah and I agreed that generosity required limits to prevent exploitation, and future family members would be welcomed with clear guidelines about respect and responsibility. Professional success continued with my promotion to lead developer and opportunities for freelance consulting work. The financial stress from Brad's fraud was completely resolved, and we were building savings for future goals, including children travel and community involvement. Mrs. Patterson's suggestion that we start a neighborhood watch program led to monthly community meetings focused on safety and mutual support. The experience with Brad's criminal behavior motivated other residents to share information and protect each other from similar threats. Emma's baby shower was a celebration of new beginnings and second chances. Family members who'd enabled destructive behavior now supported healthy choices and honest communication. The gift of a handmade crib from Uncle Robert symbolized our commitment to nurturing the next generation with better values. The final legal resolution came when Brad's federal sentence began and his appeals were exhausted. He would serve his full term without possibility of early release, followed by years of supervised probation and restitution payments. Justice had been served through patience, evidence, and refusing to enable criminal behavior. The life lesson from this ordeal was profound true. Family loyalty means holding each other accountable rather than enabling destructive choices. Generosity without boundaries becomes exploitation, and protecting people from consequences prevents them from learning and growing. Setting limits and demanding respect actually strengthened our family relationships by forcing everyone to confront their behavior and take responsibility for their choices. The people who belonged in my life were those who respected boundaries and contributed positively rather than those who demanded support while offering manipulation in return. Justice isn't revenge, it's protecting yourself and others from people who would exploit kindness for personal gain. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for family is refuse to be their victim, creating consequences that force them to change their behavior or face the legal system alone. The apartment that had been a source of family conflict became the foundation for a new life built on mutual respect, honest communication, and healthy boundaries. Mom would have been proud to see her legacy used to create genuine happiness rather than enable criminal behavior and family manipulation. Today, Sarah and I wake up in our own home, surrounded by people who respect our boundaries and celebrate our success without expecting financial rewards. The family members who remained in our lives learned to offer support without exploitation, creating relationships based on love rather than obligation. Brad's criminal behavior and the family's enabling responses taught us invaluable lessons about protecting ourselves while remaining generous and loving people. We can help others without sacrificing our security set boundaries, without abandoning relationships and demand respect, while offering support to those who've earned it. The journey from exploitation to empowerment wasn't easy, but it was necessary. Standing up to family manipulation and criminal behavior required courage, but the result was authentic relationships and genuine peace that no amount of money could purchase. Have you ever had to choose between keeping the peace with family members and protecting yourself from their harmful behavior? I'd love to hear your thoughts on setting boundaries while maintaining relationships. If this story resonated with your own experiences, please like this video and share it with someone who might benefit from hearing about the importance of healthy boundaries. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories about overcoming family challenges and building stronger relationships through honest communication. Your comments mean everything to me, so please share your own experiences with family dynamics and boundary setting below. Thank you for listening to my story about learning to protect my inheritance and my future from people who would exploit my generosity. I hope it inspires you to value yourself enough to demand the respect you deserve from everyone in your life, especially family members who should be supporting your success rather than exploiting it. Until next time, remember that the people who truly love you will respect your boundaries and celebrate your happiness. The ones who don't deserve those boundaries aren't the ones who should be making decisions about your life.